Welcome to the HerbWorks podcast featuring Roger Drummer, the formulator at herbworks.com. An educator in the field of nutrition and Chinese herbalism, Roger has a unique ability to keep things simple by taking all the guesswork out of complicated health issues. HerbWorks is committed to helping you improve your health and enhance your life through herbs and common sense.
Welcome to the HerbWorks podcast. I'm Laura Shakti.
And Roger Drummer.
Today we are talking about sugar and your health and sugar cravings.
It's a huge topic.
It is a big topic.
I hope I can get it all in.
All right. Well, let's start with the very, very basics. How does sugar affect your health, or why should we be caring about having sugar cravings?
Well, sugar is becoming the largest part of almost everyone's diet. It's amazing how the average person has added so many sweet foods to their daily diet that sugar is becoming anywhere between 25 to 45% of their calories. And why is that bad?
Are you talking about white sugar or just
any type of sugar?
How food is converted in the body?
Any type of sugar. I'm not going to get into all the different types of sugar, but we're talking about sugar that's
Sweet
added to
things.
Baked goods, sugar that's in juice,
meat,
sugar that's added into juices, into other drinks, in any type of food.
Even
that
proteins,
you buy.
right? Tofu
Even
could
proteins,
be coated with a sugar thing,
anything
and meat
can
be sugar cured.
added to it. So it's just sugar. Basically, the average American consumes about 170 pounds of sugar a year. And then when you add into the fact they consume another 170 pounds or so of processed white flours that instantly turn into sugar, just like eating sugar, you're looking at 350 pounds a year.
All right. Why should we care? Why should we care how much sugar we eat?
You care because it's one of the worst things you can put in your body as far as inflammation. We all know now that inflammation is literally one of the root causes of every chronic illness that affects people, right? So the top 6 illnesses that kill the most people in the United States all have a root cause of inflammation.
What
is the main driver for inflammation? Sugar.
What are the top 6? Do you know them?
I think they are cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity.
And you're saying that sugar plays a role in all of those top killers in America?
Yes. There's nothing in your diet that will throw your body's ability to reach a balanced point and to correct itself than sugar. There's nothing that you have in your diet that will cause more inflammation than just eating sugar, and nothing throws your entire system off or has such a immediate response from your body that it's almost like it sends off an alarm to your whole system to compensate for your sugar levels. And even the main chemical that our body makes to lower your sugar, drive it into your cells so you can use it for energy. If you have too much of that, it causes inflammation. So basically, people are in an inflammatory state all the time because of the level of sugar that they have in their diet and their body's inability to actually clear it out.
Now, I know some people who have sugar in the morning, sugar in the afternoon, sugar at night in the form of, they drink soda. They have sugary snacks. They have food that has a lot of sugar in it. Maybe they eat fast food or processed food. And they may not particularly notice that they're craving sugar because they eat it so often. I also know other people who are very health conscious, who maybe have, a very aware diet, and those people can say to you, oh, wow, I really want sugar today, or I really noticed that I wanted a lot of sugar today. So when you are talking about sugar cravings, is part of that building an awareness, or do you think a lot of people already know when they want sugar?
Well, the first people that you mentioned, if they're having sugar all day long, they're not going to notice that they have cravings. They're not going to notice that sugar does much to them because
they're constantly having it.
It's kind of like being poisoned 10 times a day.
Right.
You don't really notice the little bit of poison you're having, so you build up a tolerance to it. But if you tried to take it away from them, you'd almost have to take them to a rehab center because their whole system is just wound up with sugar. And that's the type of person that will never really pay attention to much anything and then just completely break down when they're older and have a chronic disease and think it's related to something else.
Well, there's a lot of teenagers, right, especially crave sugar. They've got really rough schedules. They get up early in the morning. They've got long school days. They have sports. They have after-school activities. And I teach teenagers, so I see a lot of them drinking, blue slushy things and eating sugary snack after sugary snack after sugary snack because it gives them that burst of energy that they need to...
They're doing it because they're addicted to sugar and that no one's ever taught them anything else about it, but they're still addicted to sugar. Yeah, it gives them a quick burst of energy, right. But why do you require that quick burst of energy?
Because
you don't really have energy.
Right.
That's the underlying problem to it. So if you go on a healthier diet and actually correct that, then you can start the process or become aware of what sugar does to you, and then you can remove it from your system. But part of that is what our topic is today about is sugar cravings.
So if you're someone that doesn't notice how much sugar you're eating, the first step might be to maybe take a look at your food and figure out how much of it is sweet, how much of it is composed of sugar, and how often you're eating sugar.
Well, the first step in any of this is that someone has to want to get rid of sugar in their diet. It's not a topic you want to bring up with someone that doesn't care or is
right.
not aware of their diet. I mean, there's no sense talking to them.
So why should someone want to get it out other than it causes inflammation in the body, which can lead to chronic diseases?
Other than having a chronic disease and dying, I can't think of any reason why anybody would want to get it out of their diet.
Well, I mean, some people are more motivated by, I want to be, fit and beautiful, or I want to be thin, or I want to lose weight.
Well, one of the easiest ways to lose weight is to deal with the excess sugar in your body and in your diet. And again, no matter how you're looking at this, whether you want to improve your skin, whether you want to lose weight, whether you're just trying to feel better, whatever it is, sugar cravings is at the root of all of it.
Right.
And unless you deal with sugar cravings in particular, then you'll never be able to stay on a diet. You'll never be able to not just lapse and get off your diet. You'll never be able to take care of your lapses in energy because your body is constantly stimulated and overreacting to too much sugar, maybe dropping your sugar too low. There's all these things going on. You're never going to really be able to stabilize unless you deal with the sugar. But again, at the root of all of it, it comes down to sugar cravings. Now, how can you correct sugar cravings? And then what impact will that have on all these other issues?
So if you're someone who's interested in correcting those sugar cravings, what's the first step?
The first step is realizing what it's actually about. When I was giving lectures on, continuously on sugar and diet and things, and I would ask a crowd of 120 people, who has sugar cravings? Mm-hmm. Every single person in the room would raise their hand.
But these were people that were already into health conscious.
They were already
modalities.
into health conscious, but even those people, most of them didn't eat that well, and they don't understand basic things. When you have large crowds and people are into nutrition, doesn't mean that they know a lot. It just means they desire to know a lot, and that's why they're there. So it's a great environment to teach. But with sugar cravings, the first thing you have to realize is that if you crave sugar all the time, meaning that you're constantly at work and you're stressed, if you have any little stress or anything going on and you want to reach for something to eat, it's always a cookie or something sweet.
Or a muffin or a donut.
You've trained your brain to want sugar. Mm-hmm. And you've trained your whole system to crave things and to want sugar. One of the interesting things about sugar cravings is that what you'll find if you can deal with that and get rid of it, you'll get rid of most of your cravings for alcohol, drugs, cigarettes, all those things. It all comes back to a similar mechanism in your brain.
Addiction.
Addiction, which creates cravings.
So you're talking about seeing sugar cravings in the context of looking at it as an addiction within the body.
An imbalance.
An imbalance, right? I mean, we certainly know that when we have that sugary treat, whether it's a lot of sugar in tea or a lot of sugar in caffeine or something that is a sweet, right, a baked good or whatever, we notice that it makes us high momentarily. And a lot of us will notice the crash afterwards. People
don't get addicted to sugar because it makes them feel bad when they start eating it. It's a nice little buzz.
As most substances.
But the reality is it's not a long-term thing that you can sustain, just like any other drug. And so, I mean, there's studies that come out that compare the power of a sugar addiction to a cocaine addiction.
Wasn't there a book back in the 80s, Sugar Blues?
Oh, that came out in the 60s.
Was it the 60s? All right, maybe I found it.
It was an amazing book, and people should read it even though it's now 50 years old.
Wow.
I learned things in that book that made such impacts in my health back in the 80s.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I remember reading it back in the 80s.
It's just an amazing book. Yeah. And so, but with sugar cravings, the first thing you have to know is that if you crave sugar, your brain is actually missing something, and that's protein. Your brain is missing a protein that allows it to balance a certain neurotransmitter so that you no longer crave sugar.
What kind of protein?
Just any protein.
So you mean that if I wake up in the morning and I'm thinking about donuts and sugared coffee, which I don't personally eat, but just say I did, that's because my body wants protein?
Your brain is lacking dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter, and to make dopamine, you have to eat protein. Now,
there's the connection.
This is the tricky part, because believe me, America is not a country that has people that are deficient in protein. But
right.
what they're deficient is the timing of it, because Americans somehow, through all this education of eating cereals and different things for breakfast, we've become a country that loves to wake up with coffee, sugar, donuts, and cereal. Or juice, right?
Like grains of some sort.
Grains of some sort, juices. It's all just heavily loaded with sugar. And so that's exactly the opposite of what your brain wants. Your brain wants protein because it'll make dopamine out of a pure protein. It'll take an amino acid called tyrosine out of protein. It'll send it directly up in your brain and instantly make dopamine. Now, dopamine is a neurotransmitter that basically is responsible for the power of your brain. It's like the horsepower, right? It's dopamine. But one of the other effects of that is it controls cravings for sugar.
That's interesting.
So if you're craving sugar, it's more than likely you're dopamine deficient. And so sugar in the morning gives you a false dopamine high because all of a sudden your brain wakes up. But then a few hours later you crash. A lot of people think it's because, well, my sugar's dropped. Well, that might be part of it. But the other thing is that heavy carbohydrate sugar breakfast helps you to just make serotonin, which wants to relax you and let you sit back in your chair and kind of just
But it also makes you a little happier, right?
Mellow.
Serotonin makes you a little happier.
A little happier, but too much of it early in the day when you're supposed to be at work, it's not a good thing.
All right, so what is a healthier alternative to either waking up and having grains for breakfast or fruit and grains? A lot of people will do a fruit smoothie. Some people will do, oatmeal with berries. It's still grains and fruit. So what is a different alternative?
Well, let's keep this in the context of people that have sugar cravings.
Okay.
To change that, you have to change your breakfast radically for at least 10 days. And once you do that, you go into that window of 10 days. If you can follow the diet for that period of time, your sugar cravings will disappear. And your brain will have a different set to it. And then after that 10 days, you don't have to be as strict with your breakfast. You could start adding other things to it, but you still should have a major portion of that meal be a protein food.
All right, so you are really talking about then resetting your metabolism or resetting your brain's response by changing breakfast?
By changing breakfast.
The breakfast reset.
The breakfast reset.
Okay,
basically.
Let's hear some more about that.
So, and you also have to look at it from the standpoint of even, I practice Chinese herbology. In Chinese herbology, the morning time is the most robust time of your digestion. The most weakening foods you can ever put into your digestive system are sugary sweet things. Just a small amount of it is stimulating, and we're talking just a little bit like a small piece of fruit or something, but the way that we eat it here in America, all the heavy carbohydrates, the donut, coffee, sugar, juice thing, just basically shuts your digestion off. You make an incredible amount of moisture and phlegm in it. You can't process it. It slows your energy down.
Is that same thing happening then for a bowl of oatmeal, a cereal with milk?
Oatmeal's not as bad because it's not as sweet.
Well, unless you put a lot of sugar in it.
Oatmeal can be part of your breakfast, but again, if you're going through this process, you're going to have to wait 10 days because part of this whole process is getting you off of sugar. And then you can reintroduce things, but you're still going to want to have your breakfast be at least half protein.
So what would that look like in the case of a vegetarian?
In the case of a vegetarian, you're probably going to have to buy a protein powder that has no carbohydrates in it and that you just have by itself the first thing that you eat. And again, by breakfast, I want to clarify something because not everybody wakes up and wants to have breakfast at 7 or 8 o'clock. Breakfast would mean, in this context, your first meal. And more than likely, it probably should be within 3 hours of waking up. But your first meal has to be a protein food because, and this is why it's so important as the first meal, and this is why Americans are not protein deficient, but their brains might be, because the first meal determines how your brain is set for the day. And then, if you miss it, doesn't matter if you sit down to lunch and have a 2-pound steak, right? It's not going to make up for the fact that you flooded your brain with sugar and serotonin in the morning and set it up that way for the day.
All right, so what I'm understanding then is that really you're talking about two things. One is resetting that morning brain.
And at the same time, you're going to reset your metabolism.
By giving it protein.
Right.
And the second is that even if you have a lot of protein in your diet, either because you eat animal protein or you have large meals of protein, that you want to use protein throughout the day to help the brain's function. So it's not just about, as you said, having a steak for lunch and, okay, I've had my protein, so now I can eat pasta the rest of the day.
Right. It's not about that. Your brain loves protein. Your body and brain loves protein, but it doesn't love excessive protein, which is what most Americans consume. If you eat meat and you live in America, you have plenty of protein in your diet. But what most of us are missing is protein in the first meal. Your brain needs some protein to boot up every morning and to make dopamine and then control sugar cravings. Your brain has to have it or it's going into a deficit for the rest of the day.
It's interesting because in Europe, where I grew up, a lot of countries have protein foods for breakfast, right? We have boiled eggs. Even some places have, like in Germany, there'll be rye bread with slices of meat, even radishes. A lot of places have vegetables and protein as part of their breakfast foods.
When I was traveling through Europe, almost every hotel that I was in had salmon in the buffet for breakfast. And so, of course, they were terrible at making eggs. Somebody
eggs. Okay, we're back to the eggs.
Somebody should send those chefs to America for at least one summer just to fry eggs. But the reality is that they always had ham, slices of ham. They always had salmon. They always had things there and really bad eggs. But
all right, in case you don't know, Mr. Drummer is very particular about his eggs. So let's talk about eggs for breakfast.
I'm not that particular. I've just mastered how to make eggs. But back to the breakfast. The reality is, so let's say you're vegetarian. You have to buy a protein powder that has no carbohydrates in it. It can have a little bit of fat, but not too much. And I'll get into that in a little bit here. A little bit of fat is okay because it's not going to disrupt the absorption of the protein. So if you're not vegetarian, you can have a chicken breast. You can have a burger with no bun, just the burger itself. You can have
full English breakfast, which
and
has got your
this may
eggs.
seem, really kind of, sterile and odd to have that one little thing. But remember, you're in a process of training your brain for 10 days and you're getting rid of sugar cravings. That, if you do this right, you will have benefits for the rest of your life.
So what about just having eggs and toast for breakfast?
Well, that can happen after your 10 days. The reason you don't want to have it now, there's two reasons. One, it's not a pure protein food.
What isn't?
Eggs.
Oh.
Eggs are mostly fat. Most of the calories comes from fat. There's about 6 grams of protein in an egg. And the reason you don't want to do that is because if you already have sugar cravings and you're having problems with sugar, your body is more likely pre-diabetic and you have insulin resistance anyway. So part of this whole process of going the 10 days to get off sugar cravings is going to reset your entire metabolism. It's going to allow your cells to lose its insulin resistance and go back to a normal function. And that's how the whole diet really works. So now you've gotten up, let's say you had a burger. You just fried a burger
for breakfast.
And nothing else, right?
What about vegetarians then? Just the
Well,
protein
the protein
powder?
powder. You're going to have to buy a protein powder. There's no pure...
No eggs.
There's no pure protein food in vegetarian land.
Lentils?
That's not a pure protein
Garbanzos?
food. Nothing. Those are mostly carbohydrates. Those are they call them protein foods,
Yeah.
and people should be flogged for saying
What?
that. Because
What are
they're
you
not
saying?
protein foods. If you look at the dang label, you'll notice that it's 3/4 carbohydrates. Just because it has protein in it doesn't make it a protein food. Okay, so let's say you've had your breakfast. More than likely, you're going to feel really good because your brain loves it, right? You're going to give it at least an hour to get in your system, and your brain's going to start changing. If you want to eat after that, the next meal you have should just be vegetables of some sort, and you can have some more protein, nothing else. In this 10-day process, I want you to realize you're not going to eat grains at all.
Okay, so
Right.
if I'm playing the skeptic, how do you know this? How do you know this works? And how do you know that having breakfast that is protein followed by vegetables and protein, what is the basis for you yourself coming to this particular path in food management?
I have literally sat down and put over 30,000 people on health programs, and I've put this whole dietary program into an effect with a company that I used to lecture with, and everybody got incredible results. Even people, I had people tell me that were overweight since they were 8 or 9 years old, and they were now in their 50s. It was the first time they ever lost weight.
Because they were having protein for breakfast.
They're having they went through the 10-day phase of just the protein and stuff for breakfast and changed the way they eat. I had one gentleman who did this for 30 days and went off 6 medications.
Really?
For diabetes and high blood pressure.
That's fascinating.
Now, why would that actually happen? It happened because once he regulated his own sugar, most of his inflammation went away, and both of those imbalances are related to too much sugar and inflammation. And his system corrected itself. It was a very simple premise. You're not treating anything with this diet. You're literally just letting your body get its normal metabolism back, and then it starts to correct itself because your body, every single moment, wants to correct itself anyway. That's how it's programmed. The only reason it doesn't do it is because you're putting something in it that wastes its energy.
Right. So this sounds to me kind of like when you talk about homeostasis, when you talk
Yes.
about adaptogenic herbs and how their role in your diet and your food program when you take adaptogenic herbs is that they help your body regulate itself. They
It's
help
all
you come
about
to that balance.
regulation. Everything in your system is about regulation. And that system is overtaxed and worn out because we tend to not think about our health, and we throw anything in our body that just tastes good to us.
So you're saying the donut diet doesn't work.
The donut diet does not work. And so you have to, if you're going to sit down and want to get rid of sugar cravings, you have to make the commitment that you're actually going to do it. You can't sit down and go, well, if it works the first 3 hours, I'll stick with it. No, you have to give it some time. It takes time for your brain to actually change. So in that period of time, you're not going to eat any grains. And the reason for that is that if you already have insulin resistance, you already have sugar cravings, you're more than likely pre-diabetic. Basically, you've lost the ability to metabolize grains. And grains raise your blood sugar too much, so you just do away with them. Now you go on this diet, you have your protein for breakfast, your next meal when you get hungry. And for a lot of people, it's 2 or 3 hours later, they don't feel like eating because their brain got what it wanted, right? And so now they have another piece of protein. They have a bunch of vegetables. They can have a salad. They can have, cut up vegetables, whatever they want. And the evening meal will be the same. Just another protein, all the vegetables you want to eat. And what you're going to find, even after 4 days, your brain's changing. Right? Your brain and your body now has started to let loose of all this excessive sugar, and it starts to listen to insulin again. And now your whole system starts to work, right? After 4 or 5 days, you get up to the 7-day mark, and you're going to notice that you don't even think about sugar really anymore.
So how does this way of, I'll call it food management or brain breakfast diet, I mean, I don't like the word diet myself, but how is this different than looking at food from the paleo diet or the Atkins diet or, all these other ways that people are experimenting with for better health and weight loss?
Well, really, everything that's in this diet, if you're just looking at it from a food standpoint, you could say it's a paleo diet because you're only eating natural food. You're eating protein foods and you're eating vegetables. The paleo diet, a lot of people get confused and think it's a confusing thing to go on. It's food that your ancestors ate. All it is a whole food diet. You don't eat a lot of grains on it because grains weren't available during that time period that it's named after, the paleo, right? So you don't have a lot of grains. You might not be eating any, but it's based on vegetables, fruit, and proteins.
And what you're saying is that more importantly than just the food groups that you're choosing from, right? Whether that's from a paleo diet of looking at less grains or no grains, or an Atkins way of looking at food with more protein, or the ketogenic way of looking at food with less sugar, right? These are all kind of concepts in food, the way you eat. You're saying that timing is a really important factor that maybe these other ways of looking at food aren't acknowledging?
Well, I don't know if they're acknowledging it because I don't remember reading too much about sugar cravings in those books, although I'm not the most well-read guy on the Atkins diet. I never really liked Atkins diet. And Atkins diet really is now being compared to ketogenic, and they're not
quite the same.
Not quite the same. Atkins, the main difference is there's a lot more nutrition in the ketogenic diet. And again, that diet is about timing and intermittent fasting and different things that weren't part of the Atkins diet. He was just anti-carb.
Okay, so we've talked about the ketogenic diet before on a podcast, and the way you're talking about this for breakfast and sugar cravings, again, is about this timing and how you're using protein.
So you wake up in the morning, your first meal when you want to have it is going to be a protein food. Now, you might wake up and want to have coffee or something. Well, just have it black, because if you're dumping sugar in it and dairy in it, you've
Well, what about having your tianqi, if you want to have that in the morning?
That would be fine. But tianqi actually has an amino acid to mimic protein food.
Oh, that's part of why you feel so good when you take it in the morning.
It turns on your brain. But your first food still wants to be a protein food, right? So you go through this process for a week, and you're going to notice that more than likely, most of the people I put this on lose their sugar cravings within a week. But you want to make it 10 days. You really want to consolidate your brain energy. And this is the thing about this. Don't look at it as your long-term diet. Look at it as I'm resetting my brain. I'm resetting my metabolism. My digestion's going to work better. My brain's going to work better. And then you start to alter it to fit your lifestyle more. Because you feel so good and you're not craving sugar, it's going to be easier for you to make food choices because you don't realize how many of your food choices are just based on the fact that you crave sugar.
So when you're talking about this anti-sugar craving diet, or the brain diet, as I guess you might call it. You're talking about starting with protein, having protein throughout the day, and having...
With vegetables.
With vegetables. And you're talking about having no sugar at all?
No sugar at all.
So no sugar in your drinks. No sugar.
You shouldn't be having any drinks except for water.
And what about carbohydrates, baked goods?
No baked goods.
Nothing
at all. No grains. Once you say no grains, there's no baked goods.
So no gluten-free, baked goods, none of that.
Nothing. You're going to retrain your brain. Your brain is going to be completely booted up and different after 10 days of doing this diet.
All right, so we're talking about breaking sugar cravings and resetting your brain with this particular way of eating food or diet that you have come up with. This is your protocol, right?
Yes.
What do you call this?
Oh, I just call it the better brain diet.
Better brain diet. All right. So if we want better brains, we're starting with protein in the morning. We're going throughout the day without having sugar for 7 days, 10 days?
10 days.
And then what?
Then you start to work other foods into your diet. And so, like, say for breakfast, you could have eggs for breakfast.
I finally get my eggs.
Well, the reason you don't want to do it at first, and a lot of people, everybody asks me, can I have eggs right away? Well, the reason you don't do it at first is that eggs are mostly fat. And you want, because you're insulin resistant, your cells are full of too much fat already, right? Because your body, insulin, it changes your blood sugar into a type of fat, sticks it in your cells. So you want to get rid of that. And so if you're eating a lot of fat, you're not going to dump that out as an energy source, right? So if you restrict yourself with the protein and the vegetables, your cells will just start dumping excess energy and you'll burn it up, right? It doesn't matter how much you eat in that first 10 days. If it's just a piece of protein and vegetables all day, your body's going to burn up excess sugar and fat like crazy. You'll probably lose 5 pounds just without even trying.
So that's a limited amount of time, 10 days, cutting out all sugar, cutting out all grains. So no,
all grains.
No rice, no quinoa,
nothing.
Nothing. All right. So 10 days of vegetables and protein matter. And you are not considering vegetarian lentils and legumes as protein matter.
No.
Really? So how do you do that then as a vegetarian to get enough protein?
Well, you're going to eat a lot of vegetables and you're probably going to have a protein drink.
Just protein drinks? What about tofu?
Probably a
soybeans?
Protein drink. After 10 days. If you have control of your sugar cravings after 7, I'm sure a piece of tofu is not going to throw you off. But the reality is tofu, again, is just a really high fat food.
So as a meat eater, this sounds like it might be a little bit easier if you incorporate animal products into your diet. As a vegetarian, we're talking about, as we said, no legumes, no grains, no soybeans, no tofu. You need a really high quality protein powder supplement then if that's where you're getting your protein for these 10 days.
Those are easy to find. There's so many protein powders out on the market. You can just buy a pure pea protein powder. Just look at the label.
Is there a particular brand that you recommend?
No, just check the labels and see what you prefer to eat.
One with no sugar.
One with no sugar. But you can buy you can buy whey protein, you can buy goat whey protein. There's all different types of protein. But you probably want to center your protein intake as a vegetarian for at least the first 7 days on just a powder, because there's not much in your diet that isn't just heavy carbohydrates.
Okay. And when you're saying no sugar, as in no grains and no added sugar, are you also including fruit in that?
You don't want to be eating fruit during this time either.
Oh, this sounds kind of intense.
Yes, but we're talking about, it sounds intense, yes, but we're talking about a life-changing program. We're talking about retraining your brain.
So what benefits to the Better Brain Diet by Roger Drummer? What would I expect if I take 10 days and I'm not having any sugar, I'm not having any fruit, I'm not having any grains of any sort, I'm just doing vegetables and protein powder?
The benefit is that you probably...
As a vegetarian.
As a vegetarian, well, to be honest with you, most vegetarians have problems with sugar anyway.
Why is that?
Because most of their diet is carbohydrate. when you become a vegetarian, it's kind of well known that you go through the first year or so and you're eating so much dairy, you're thinking about buying a cow or something. And then after that, you start eating so much carbohydrate. And, you fall into that, well, it's healthy, it's whole grains, and you're just eating carbohydrate and carbohydrate and carbohydrate. And it's real easy to end up with blood sugar issues, right?
Right. And now both of us have been vegetarian for decades and gone in and out of having, fish, not eating fish, land animals, not eating. We've experienced that a lot. So you're speaking from an experienced perspective, talking about the vegetarian diet.
I was vegetarian for probably close to 30 years, and now I'm pescatarian, so I eat fish.
Mm-hmm. Do you eat fish for breakfast?
No, I don't.
Except for when you're in Europe eating salmon.
And salmon maybe in Europe, but
in Cyprus we had some pretty great fish for breakfast too.
But so I've probably tried every diet known to man, so except for the donut diet.
Except for the donut diet, which
but
people
the reality is it works, and we're talking about a major reset of your brain. And when you come through this, what you're going to be surprised about is that now you don't really have cravings for anything. You don't crave alcohol the same way you did. You don't crave coffee or cigarettes or drugs. Even pharmaceutical drugs, you just don't have the same cravings because your brain is different. You feel different. You're clear. Your brain is working on a different level than it has in years. And this is a thing that most people don't realize, how sugar is wrapped up in almost any addiction, because sugar makes you feel different the fastest of almost anything you can take. Maybe alcohol is just as fast, because alcohol really is not just the alcohol, it's the sugar rush, right? But nothing changes the way you feel as quickly as alcohol and sugar. And this is why people use so much alcohol, drugs, sugar, tobacco, because they all change the way you feel within minutes.
Whereas with this Better Brain Diet by Roger Drummer,
if you don't feel like you need to change the way you feel because you feel good, you'll have less cravings for everything. And so you go through this process, you reset your brain, and then all of a sudden you're making different food choices naturally because you're not just buying everything for that immediate fix.
So I think what you just said is a really important point, that for many people, their day is a lot of highs and lows, ups and downs, whether or not they use nicotine, whether or not they use caffeine. Sugar can also give you this high, low, high, low, high, low, emotional and physical energy fluctuations throughout the day. And what you're talking about in this Better Brain Diet, Roger Drummer's Better Brain Diet, is that once you stabilize and you stop going through those fluctuations, high, low, energetically, emotionally, physical energy, you come to a place where you just feel good most of the time. And so therefore, you don't need that emotional rush from sugar or that physical rush from sugar, right?
Right. You don't need it. And the great thing is after 10 days, you're still going to have a protein-based breakfast. You can have eggs because eggs do have a lot of protein.
But only if you make them.
You can have a piece of toast with it. But it's not going to be predominantly a carbohydrate meal. And you're going to introduce carbohydrates back into your diet because now that you've retrained your brain and you're having more protein for breakfast, the carbohydrates, the amount you have in the afternoon and maybe the evening are not going to throw your brain off because you're still setting your brain in the morning with a protein food. It's in a different place.
So it seems like the benefits from this Better Brain Diet are enormous as far as emotionally, physically, but it also seems like a really big commitment.
Well, it is, but most people that come to the point where they want to lose weight, they're ready to make a commitment. Look at all the crazy diets that are out there that aren't based really on much information at all. And so they're ready to make a commitment. Most people that want to start a diet are, subconsciously, they want to change something. They think it's just diet because that's the easiest thing to think about, but they're ready for a change. And this diet can reset your entire brain and change the way you look at foods, the way you look at other things like alcohol, drugs, cigarettes. It changes the way you look at most things in life, because you're coming to life now from a standpoint of not craving everything. You're coming from being more grounded, more in control of how your thought process works. It even helps you with stress because you're not having these ups and downs of energy all day long. So this diet has a broad-based effect in your entire system, and yet it's still based on the number one thing that throws everybody off is sugar cravings.
That's really interesting, because those of us that practice yoga or, are in fitness, most people are practicing that for the same reasons, right? They want better sleep. They want better balance in their lives. They want better health. But not everybody thinks about kind of the ups and downs of their day dependent upon their diet. So
everybody thinks sugar cravings is about willpower, and choosing different foods is about willpower. Well, it's partly that, but the main part of it is just is how your brain is functioning, what you've actually trained it to want and to crave. And that's normally sugar for most people. And if you've trained it to do that, you can train it to do something else.
That is great advice. Thank you so much, everybody. This has been Laura
and Roger Drummer. Thank you for tuning into the HerbWorks podcast.